Ambassador Thelen of the Galactic Council stood before the emergency session with a feeling he had rarely experienced in his long life. He was nervous. Around him, representatives from 47 different species waited to hear his report on the human situation. Thelen was 130 years old, considered middle-aged for his species. He had spent the last month reviewing every piece of data about humanity, every battle report, every intercepted communication. What he had learned disturbed him deeply. "Honored council members," he began, his voice transmitted through dozens of translators into dozens of languages. "I have completed my investigation into the recent conflict between humanity and the Krellian Empire. My findings suggest that we have made a serious error in our assessment of the human species." Councillor Vren of the Horthak Union, an insect-like being with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, interrupted. "The humans won a single conflict against an overconfident enemy. This does not change their status as a probationary member species." Thelen had expected resistance. Vren was old even by Horthak standards and set in her ways. "With respect, Councillor, it was not a single conflict. It was a coordinated defense across multiple star systems, fought simultaneously on dozens of fronts. The humans defeated a force that outnumbered them 3-1. They did so with minimal casualties while inflicting devastating losses on the Krellians." He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the Battle of Sentinel-7. "This is Captain Daniel Brooks. He is 32 years old and commanded the defense of Sentinel-7 station. Please watch his tactical decisions during this engagement." The council watched as the human captain coordinated his defense, anticipating enemy movements, adapting to changing situations, and ultimately holding his position until reinforcements arrived. His crew worked with smooth efficiency, each member knowing their role without needing constant direction. "Note the age of his crew," Thelen continued. "Lieutenant Amy Peterson, his communications officer, is 24. Ensign Kyle Martinez, one of his fighter pilots, is 19. By our standards, these are children. By human standards, they are trained military personnel." Councillor Vren clicked her mandibles in what Thelen knew was skepticism. "Surely these are exceptions. Elite forces specially trained." "No, Councillor. These are average human military personnel. Let me show you more." The display changed to show Sergeant Maria Garcia's ground combat on New Horizon Colony. The council watched as the young human sergeant, barely into her 20s, commanded a squad against overwhelming odds. She moved through the urban battlefield with confidence, making split-second decisions, adapting tactics on the fly. "This sergeant is 23 years old," Thelen said. "She has 5 years of military experience. By Horthak standards, Councillor Vren, she would still be in basic education." The footage continued, showing battle after battle. Young human faces, some barely out of their teenage years, fighting with a skill and determination that should not have been possible. The council chamber grew quiet as the representatives absorbed what they were seeing. Thelen switched to a new display, showing comparative biological data. "The error we made is simple but profound. We assumed that all species develop at roughly the same rate relative to their lifespan. Humans live 70 to 80 years on average. We calculated that they would reach military maturity around age 30, similar to other species at 40% of their lifespan. But humans do not follow this pattern. They reach full neurological maturity at approximately age 25. This is only 30% of their expected lifespan. More significantly, their cognitive development outpaces their physical development by a considerable margin." He pulled up brain scans, hormonal charts, and psychological assessments. "A human at age 20 has the strategic thinking capacity, emotional regulation, and decision-making ability that most council species do not develop until much later in life. This is not training or education. This is their biology." "Why?" asked Ambassador Krell, a reptilian being from a high-gravity world. "What evolutionary pressure would create such rapid mental development?" Thelen had been hoping someone would ask. "Earth is what we classify as a Class 7 death world. High gravity, extreme climate variation, numerous apex predators, frequent natural disasters, and a remarkable diversity of deadly microorganisms. Human ancestors evolved in an environment where intelligence was the primary survival tool." The display showed images of Earth, hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that could split continents, predators that could kill with a single bite, humans who could not think quickly, adapt rapidly, and make life or death decisions died before reaching reproductive age. For millions of years, Earth selected for intelligence and adaptability above almost all else. Furthermore, Theln continued, humans have been in a state of continuous warfare with each other for at least 10,000 years. They have refined the art of combat across countless conflicts. By the time a human reaches age 18 and becomes eligible for military service, they have already spent years absorbing strategic concepts through games, simulations, and cultural education. He showed footage from human entertainment, war games that children played, strategy simulations that teenagers competed in, historical battles studied in schools. Humans prepare for war from childhood, not through deliberate militarization but through cultural osmosis. War is part of their story as a species. Counselor Vren finally spoke, her voice thoughtful. You are saying that when we granted humanity probationary membership, we believed we were accepting a species that would need decades of guidance. Instead, we accepted a species that was already militarily mature. Exactly, Theln confirmed. The Krellian Empire attacked humanity thinking they were striking at children. They were wrong. The soldiers, pilots, and commanders they faced were not children by human standards. They were adults in their prime, with years of training and experience. Ambassador Paul Henderson, the human representative to the council, had been sitting quietly through the presentation. Now he stood, and Theln noticed how young he looked compared to the other ambassadors. Henderson was 36 years old, barely middle-aged by human standards, but he carried himself with confidence. Honored Council, Henderson said, his voice clear and steady. Ambassador Theln has explained the biological and cultural factors that make humanity different from other council species. I am here to discuss what this means for our future relationship with the galactic community. He activated his own display, showing the proposal that Colonel Murphy had discussed with War Master Gentok. Humanity requests reclassification from probationary to full council membership, with complete autonomous defense rights. We have demonstrated our ability to protect ourselves and our allies. We have also shown restraint. We could have destroyed the Krellian fleet. Instead, we disabled their ships and accepted their surrender. But how can we trust a species that reaches combat capability so young? Counselor Vren asked. You say your soldiers at age 20 are the equal of our warriors at age 60. This seems dangerous. What prevents young, impulsive humans from starting conflicts? Henderson smiled, and Theln noticed it was not a happy expression. Counselor, I want to introduce you to some people. The display changed to show an older human woman. She had gray hair and lines on her face that spoke of many years. This is General Patricia Cole. She is 63 years old and serves as Earth's Chief of Military Operations. She does not fly fighters or lead ground assaults. She plans strategy, manages logistics, and makes decisions about when and how Earth uses military force. More faces appeared. Admiral George Hunt, age 58, Chief of Naval Intelligence. Professor Helen Rodriguez, age 67, our leading expert on xenological conflict resolution. Dr. Charles Webb, age 71, who advises our government on galactic policy. Humans understand that different ages bring different strengths, Henderson explained. Our young are fast, adaptable, and capable of handling the physical and immediate mental demands of combat. Our elders are wise, patient, and better at seeing long-term consequences. We use both. We do not send 20-year-olds to make policy decisions any more than we send 70-year-olds to pilot fighters. Theln felt a grudging respect for the human ambassador. Henderson was addressing the Council's real fear, not their stated concerns. The Council was worried about a species of young warriors, aggressive and impulsive. Henderson was showing them that humanity had systems in place to balance youth and age. Furthermore, Henderson continued, humanity has a long history of civilian control over military forces. Our soldiers, no matter how capable, answer to elected civilian governments. They do not make decisions about war and peace. They execute the decisions made by our political leaders, many of whom are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Counselor Vren considered this. So your young fight, but your old decide when to fight? Essentially, yes. It is a system that has worked for us for centuries. Young people have the physical and mental capability for combat. Older people have the wisdom to know when combat is necessary and when it can be avoided. Ambassador Theln stepped forward again. Honored Council, I have reviewed humanity's governmental systems, military structure, and historical record. 6 months had passed since the war ended, and the Galactic Council granted humanity full membership status. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Horizon and watched the first joint training exercise between human and alien forces. Alex was 29 years old, the youngest officer ever selected to command a council training operation. When the council first announced his appointment, several member species had objected. They could not understand how someone so young could be trusted with such responsibility. 6 months later, those objections had mostly faded. All ships report ready for the exercise, said his executive officer, Commander Sarah Blake. She was 31 and had served with Alex for 3 years. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, each anticipating what the other needed before words were spoken. Good, Alex said. Let us show our new friends what humanity can do. The exercise was designed to test mixed-species combat teams. Human ships would work alongside Krellian, Horthak, and vessels from a dozen other species. They would face simulated enemy forces in a complex tactical scenario. Alex had spent weeks planning this exercise. He knew the aliens were watching carefully, still uncertain about humanity's place in the galactic military structure. This was a chance to prove that humans could work with other species, not just fight against them. Begin the scenario, Alex ordered. On the main view screen, the simulated enemy forces appeared. They were attacking a civilian station, and the mixed fleet needed to defend it while minimizing casualties. It was a classic defensive scenario, the kind that military academies across the galaxy used for training. The alien ships moved into their traditional formations. Krellian vessels formed a defensive wall. Horthak fighters spread out on a wide screen. Other species took up supporting positions. It was textbook tactics, solid and reliable. The human ships did something different. They scattered, moving independently, each one taking a different approach to the problem. To the aliens, it looked like chaos. To Alex, it looked like poetry. Human vessel Falcon is engaging the enemy's left flank, reported Sarah. Destroyer Eagle is moving to cut off their supply line. Fighter squadrons Alpha and Beta are conducting hit-and-run attacks on their command ships. Alex smiled. The human ships were doing exactly what he expected. They were not following a preset plan. Each captain was making their own decisions based on what they saw, adapting in real time to the changing situation. The simulated battle continued. Slowly, the alien commanders began to understand what the humans were doing. The Krellian War Master, commanding their portion of the fleet, started giving his captains more freedom to act independently. The Horthak squadron leader allowed her fighters to break formation when opportunities presented themselves. By the end of the exercise, the mixed fleet had successfully defended the station with minimal casualties. More importantly, they had learned to work together. Excellent work, everyone, Alex announced over the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships return to base for debriefing. We will analyze the exercise and identify areas for improvement. As the ships began to disperse, Alex felt a presence beside him. He turned to find Krellian Observer General, who had been assigned to monitor the training program. The old warrior, nearly 90 years old, studied Alex with his large dark eyes. That was impressive, Commander, General said through his translator. Your ships moved like water flowing around rocks. Fluid, adaptable, constantly changing. Thank you, Observer. That is what we train for. Every situation is different, so we cannot rely on rigid tactics. General was quiet for a moment. I have been studying human development since the war. I still find it difficult to understand how one so young can command so effectively. Alex had heard this before, from many alien officers. He gave his standard answer. I started my military education at age 18. I have been studying tactics, strategy, and leadership for 11 years. By your species' standards, that might not seem like much. By human standards, I am an experienced officer. But does it not bother you? General asked. Knowing that you will only have perhaps another 15 years of active service before age forces you to retire? My people serve in active combat until we are 120. We have decades to perfect our skills. Alex walked to the view screen and looked out at the stars. I used to think about that when I was younger. I would see the alien officers with their decades of experience and wonder if I could ever match them. But then I realized something. What did you realize? That experience is not just about time. It is about what you do with that time. A human fighter pilot might only serve for 10 years, but during those 10 years they might fly 1,000 missions. They train constantly, pushing themselves to the limit. When they retire, they pass their knowledge to the next generation. We build on what came before. General considered this. So your young learn from your old and the cycle continues. Exactly. Yes, I will retire from active combat duty in my 40s, but I will not stop serving. I will train the next generation. I will advise military planners. I will share what I have learned. That is how humanity compensates for our short combat careers. We make sure knowledge is never lost. Down in the fighter bay, Ensign Victoria Ross was talking with a young Horthak pilot named Zixtel. Victoria was 23 years old and had just completed her first year of active service. Zixtel was 42, considered barely past adolescence by Horthak standards. Your flying during the exercise was amazing, Zixtel said, her translator rendering the clicks and whistles of her native language into human speech. How did you learn to move like that? Victoria smiled. A lot of practice. I have been flying simulators since I was 16. When I joined the military at 18, I already had thousands of hours of flight time, even if it was not real. 16? Zixtel's antennae twitched in surprise. Your people let you fly combat simulations as children? They are games, not real training. But yes, human children play war games. We race virtual ships, fight simulated battles, solve tactical puzzles. It is entertainment, but it also teaches us to think strategically. Zixtel was quiet for a moment. My people would never allow such things for our young. We believe childhood should be protected from thoughts of violence and war. Victoria understood the cultural difference. Many alien species kept their young sheltered for decades. I think both approaches have value. Your species takes time to develop, to learn at a natural pace. Humans grow up faster because we have to. Neither way is wrong. They are just different. But do you not wish you had more time to be young? Zixtel asked. To enjoy life before taking on such responsibilities? Victoria thought about her childhood, playing strategy games with her friends, learning to fly before she could drive a car, studying military history in school. I had time to be young. I just did different things with that time than your species would. I do not feel like I missed anything. In the command center, Ambassador Paul Henderson was meeting with representatives from several council species. They wanted to discuss expanding the joint training program. Henderson, now 37, had become one of the key figures in human-alien cooperation. The training exercise was successful, said Councillor Vren. I believe we should establish permanent mixed species units. Human tactical flexibility combined with other species' strengths could create very effective forces. Henderson nodded. We agree. But we need to be careful about how we integrate. Different species have different command structures, different cultural expectations. We cannot just throw everyone together and hope it works. What do you suggest? Asked the Krellian ambassador. Exchange programs, Henderson said. Send your officers to train with us. We will send ours to train with you. Let us learn each other's ways. Over time, we will develop shared doctrines that use everyone's strengths. The meeting continued for hours, working through details and logistics. Henderson found himself enjoying the challenge. This was what full council membership meant. Not just defending humanity's interests, but helping to build something larger. Later back on Earth, General Patricia Cole reviewed reports from the training exercise. At 64 years old, she was one of the oldest active duty officers in Earth's military. Her gray hair and lined face stood in sharp contrast to the young officers she commanded. But no one questioned her authority. Her assistant, a young captain named Derek Hunt, who was 28, brought her the final analysis. The exercise exceeded all expectations, General. Both human and alien forces showed improvement in coordination and communication. Patricia read through the report carefully. Good. Schedule a follow-up exercise in 3 months. I want to see if they can maintain this level of cooperation. Derek hesitated. General, some of the alien representatives are asking about our retirement policies. They do not understand why we force experienced officers to leave active duty while they are still relatively young. Patricia smiled. She had been expecting this question. Explain to them that we do not waste experience. When an officer retires from active combat duty, they move into training, advisory, or planning roles. I flew fighters for 20 years. Then I commanded ships for 15 years. Now I plan strategy for the entire defense force. The Krellian High Command had expected a short war. They believed that a quick, overwhelming strike would force humanity to surrender before Earth could organize a real defense. 3 weeks after the first attack, they were learning just how wrong they had been. Colonel Ryan Murphy stood in the conference room of the human military base on Europa, Jupiter's moon. He was 38 years old, one of the older field commanders in Earth's military. Across the table from him sat War Master Gentok, the Krellian commander whose fleet had attacked Sentinel-7. The War Master looked tired. His skin, normally a healthy gray-blue color, had faded to something paler. His breathing apparatus clicked more slowly than usual, a sign that Krellians showed when they were under stress. "You requested this meeting," Ryan said, keeping his voice neutral. "We are listening." Gentok's translator, a small device on his collar, converted his words into human speech. "We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. The Krellian Empire is prepared to offer compensation for damages and withdraw our forces from human space." Major Christina Hayes, Ryan's intelligence officer, raised an eyebrow. She was 32 years old and had spent the last 3 weeks analyzing every piece of Krellian communication they could intercept. "That is a dramatic change from 3 weeks ago when you told us to surrender or be destroyed." Gentok made a gesture that the translator interpreted as regret. "We made assumptions. We were wrong." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Explain." The War Master was silent for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Finally, he spoke. "Our intelligence said that humans live approximately 70 to 80 years. In every species the Krellian Empire has encountered, military readiness comes at approximately 40% of life expectancy. For Krellians, that is age 60. For others, similar calculations apply." "So you thought humans would reach combat effectiveness around age 30, Christina said. "Yes. We saw your crews, your soldiers, your commanders. Most are in their 20s, some barely out of their teenage years. We assumed we were fighting your children, your youth who were still learning. We believed your true warriors, those in their 50s and 60s, would be held in reserve for desperate situations." Ryan felt a cold understanding settle over him. "You thought this was just our junior varsity team." The translator struggled with the phrase, but Gentok seemed to grasp the meaning. "We expected you to surrender before committing your most experienced forces. We thought we were being merciful by giving you that option, but we did not hold anyone back," Ryan said quietly. "Captain Daniel Brooks, who commanded Sentinel-7, is 32 years old and considered an experienced officer. Admiral Lisa Morgan, who defeated your fleet, is 47 and is one of our senior commanders. The average age of Earth's active combat personnel is 27. Gentok's breathing apparatus clicked rapidly. "This cannot be correct. You are telling me that the forces we fought, the pilots and soldiers and officers who defeated us, those were your best warriors?" "Yes," Christina said. "Humans reach full mental maturity around age 25. We are physically at our peak between 20 and 35. That is when we are fastest, strongest, and most able to handle the stress of combat. After 45, most humans retire from direct combat roles." The War Master stood suddenly, his tall frame making the ceiling seem low. He paced to the window and looked out at the ice fields of Europa. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said, and his voice through the translator sounded hollow. "We thought we were fighting children. We destroyed ships crewed by beings we believed were barely more than younglings. How can this be? How can your species reach such capability so early in life?" Ryan joined him at the window. "We evolved on a dangerous world, War Master. Earth has multiple climate zones, aggressive predators, diseases, and natural disasters. For most of human history, living to 40 was considered old age. We had to grow up fast or we died. That evolutionary pressure shaped us. And you have been fighting each other for your entire history," Gentok said. It was not a question. "Yes. For thousands of years, human tribes, nations, and empires fought constantly. We studied war, perfected tactics, built weapons. By the time a human enters military service at age 18, they have already spent years learning strategy through games, simulations, and education. By age 25, a human soldier has potentially 7 years of intensive training." Gentok turned to face Ryan. "My species does not begin military training until age 60. I myself did not command my first battle until I was 75. The idea of a 20-year-old in combat is horrifying to us. They are children." "They are adults by our standards," Ryan corrected gently. Yes, they are young. Yes, they have only lived a quarter or a third of their expected lifespan. But they are not children. They can think strategically, adapt to new situations, control their emotions under stress, and make life or death decisions. That is what matters in combat. Major Christina Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's military structure. War Master, look at this. These are the humans who fought in the Battle of New Horizon Colony. Sergeant Maria Garcia, age 23, led a squad that held off Krellian forces 5 times her number. Private Kevin Chen, age 20, held a defensive position for 6 hours against continuous assault. Lieutenant Sophie Williams, age 26, commanded a fighter squadron that destroyed 3 of your capital ships. She changed the display to show more faces, more names, more impossibly young warriors. These are not exceptions. This is normal for us. We do not see them as children. We see them as soldiers doing their duty. Gentok studied the faces on the display. By Krellian standards, every single one of them should still be living with their parents, learning basic life skills, decades away from any kind of responsibility. The idea that they could command ships, lead troops, and make tactical decisions was almost impossible for him to process. "How do we make peace with you?" the War Master asked finally. "How do we end this war when our very understanding of life stages is so different?" Ryan considered the question carefully. "You start by accepting that different species develop differently. You cannot judge us by your standards any more than we can judge you by ours. A 25-year-old human is not the same as a 25-year-old Krellian. Age is just a number. What matters is capability. The Galactic Council must know this," Gentok said. "They approved humanity's application for membership. Did they not understand this difference?" Christina shook her head. "The Council made the same mistake you did. They looked at human lifespan, did their calculations, and assumed we would follow the same developmental pattern as other species. They granted us probationary membership because they thought we would need decades of guidance before we could contribute to galactic defense." "But you do not need guidance," Gentok said. "No, we need respect. We need to be treated as equals, not as children who need protection or as a threat that needs to be controlled." The War Master returned to his seat at the conference table. He looked older now, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "The Krellian Empire will agree to your peace terms. We will pay reparations for the damage we caused. We will withdraw from all human territories. And I will personally report to the Galactic Council that humanity was misclassified." "What will you tell them?" Ryan asked. "The truth. That humanity is not a young species learning to be warriors. You are a species of warriors who happen to be young. There is a significant difference. The galaxy needs to understand this before someone else makes the same mistake we did." Christina pulled up a document on her tablet. "We have prepared a proposal for the Council. It requests that humanity be reclassified from probationary membership to full status. With autonomous defense rights, we have proven we can protect ourselves and our allies." She slid the tablet across to Gentok. "We would like the Krellian Empire to support this proposal." The War Master read through the document, his eyes moving slowly over the human text as his translator processed it. Finally, he nodded. "We will support it. It is the least we can do after attacking you based on false assumptions." Ryan stood and extended his hand. It was a human gesture, but Gentok had learned about it. The War Master stood and clasped Ryan's hand in his own larger one. "Peace between our peoples," Ryan said. "Peace," Gentok agreed, "and understanding. We will teach the galaxy that humanity is not what they think. We will make sure this mistake is never repeated." As the meeting ended and Gentok left with his guards, Christina turned to Ryan. "Do you think they really understand now?" Ryan watched the Krellian commander walk away down the corridor. "They understand that they were wrong. Whether they truly grasp what humanity is, I'm not sure. But it is a start. The galaxy has been operating under certain assumptions for millions of years. Changing those assumptions will take time." "We do not have much time," Christina said. "There are other species out there, other potential threats. If they all think we are children, we will face more attacks. Then we will keep proving them wrong," Ryan said. "One battle, one negotiation, one demonstration at a time. Eventually, the galaxy will see us as we really are." Admiral Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the battle unfold. She was 47 years old, considered young by the standards of most alien species in the galaxy. Her second in command, Commander Jake Sullivan, was only 31. Together, they commanded Earth's first response fleet, 27 ships that had been rushed into service when the Krellian attack began. All ships report ready. Admiral, Jake said from his position at the tactical display. His hands moved across the holographic controls, marking enemy positions and friendly assets. We've got them outnumbered now, but their ships are bigger. Bigger does not always mean better, Lisa replied. She had been studying the Krellians since Earth first made contact with them. They were strong, experienced, and followed traditional military doctrine that was thousands of years old. That was both their strength and their weakness. Commander, send orders to all ships. Attack pattern Delta 7, fast and aggressive. Do not give them time to think. Jake's fingers flew across his console, transmitting the orders. Within seconds, the human fleet broke formation and scattered like a school of fish. The Krellian ships tried to track them, their massive gun turrets swiveling to follow. But the human vessels were too fast. Lisa watched with satisfaction as her ships darted in and out of the enemy formation, firing, then retreating before the Krellians could respond. It was not the way the aliens fought. They preferred big, slow battles where size and firepower mattered most. They were not ready for Earth's hit-and-run tactics. Enemy flagship is trying to establish a defensive perimeter, Jake reported. They're pulling their ships into a tight formation. Let them, Lisa said. That just makes them easier targets. Launch all fighters and bombers. I want them swarming that formation. Far below the main battle on the colony world of New Horizon, the fighting was much more personal. Sergeant Maria Garcia crouched behind a broken wall and checked her rifle. She was 23 years old and had been in the military for 5 years. Around her, the rest of her squad prepared for the next assault. Krellian troops landing 3 blocks west, came the voice of her spotter through her helmet radio. 2 dropships, probably 50 soldiers. Maria considered the situation. Her squad had 12 people. The enemy had 50, plus whatever weapons their dropships carried. By any reasonable calculation, she should order a retreat, but Maria had not joined the military to retreat. Listen up, she said to her squad over the local channel. We're outnumbered, but we know this city and they do not. We're going to split into 3 teams and hit them from different directions. Make them think there are more of us than there really are. Keep moving. Keep them confused and do not let them establish a base. Her soldiers nodded. They were young, most of them barely in their 20s, but they trusted her. She had trained them, fought beside them, and never let them down. The squad split up and moved through the ruined streets of New Horizon Colony. The Krellian bombardment had damaged the outer sections of the city, leaving broken buildings and rubble-filled streets. It was perfect terrain for an ambush. Maria led her team through a collapsed shopping center and came up behind the Krellian landing zone. Through her rifle scope, she could see the alien soldiers forming up. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with thick armor and heavy weapons. They moved slowly, carefully, checking every corner. They fight like they have all the time in the world, Maria muttered. That is because they do, said Private Kevin Chen from beside her. He was 20 years old, the youngest member of her squad. I read the intelligence reports. Krellians live for 150 years. They are taught to be patient. Then let us teach them about urgency, Maria said. She raised her hand, waited until she saw the other 2 teams signal ready, then brought her hand down. All 3 teams opened fire at once. Laser bolts and plasma rounds slammed into the Krellian formation from 3 different directions. The aliens scattered, trying to find cover, but Maria's teams kept moving, kept firing from new positions. The Krellians tried to return fire, but they were shooting at ghosts. By the time they aimed at where a human had been, that human was already somewhere else. After 5 minutes of chaos, Maria signaled the retreat. Her teams melted back into the ruins of the city, leaving the Krellians confused and disorganized. It was not a major victory, but it did not need to be. The goal was to slow them down, to make them cautious, to buy time for more human forces to arrive. Back in space, Ensign Kyle Martinez was learning just how different human and Krellian combat styles really were. His fighter squadron had been ordered to attack one of the enemy cruisers, a massive ship bristling with weapons. The Krellian fighters had come out to stop them. The enemy pilots were good, Kyle had to admit. They flew in perfect formation, covering each other, never breaking ranks. It was textbook combat flying, exactly what any military academy would teach. It was also predictable. Kyle broke left, then dove, then spun his fighter in a corkscrew that would have made his flight instructor scream. Behind him, 2 Krellian fighters tried to follow but could not match his turn. They overshot and Kyle reversed, putting them in front of him. 2 quick bursts from his guns and both enemy fighters exploded. "Nice shooting, Martinez," said his squadron leader. "But do not get cocky. There are a lot more of them." Kyle grinned inside his helmet. "I am just getting started." The human fighters weaved through the Krellian formation like needles through cloth. They did not follow the rules. They did not maintain formation. They flew like every pilot was making up their own plan as they went, and somehow it worked. The Krellians could not adapt. They had been trained in a specific way, and they followed that training even when it was not working. The humans, by contrast, seemed to make up new tactics every few minutes. On the Krellian flagship, War Master Gentok watched the battle with growing confusion. He was 90 years old, a veteran of 20 conflicts, and he had never seen anything like this. The human forces should have been easy to defeat. They were young, inexperienced, barely organized. Instead, they were winning. "How many human casualties?" he asked his tactical officer. "Minimal, War Master. Their ships are fast and their pilots are skilled. They do not fight the way we expected." Gentok studied the displays. "They fight like younglings with no discipline. How can this be effective?" But it was effective. He could see it in the numbers. His fleet was taking heavy damage while the humans seemed to dance around his weapons fire. His ground troops were pinned down by forces that should have been easy to brush aside. "Send a message to High Command," Gentok ordered. "We need reinforcements. Tell them the intelligence was wrong. These humans are not children. They fight like warriors who have been in combat for decades." His communication officer worked the controls, then looked up with alarm. "War Master, the humans are jamming our long-range communications. We cannot reach High Command." Gentok's breathing apparatus clicked rapidly, a sign of stress. The humans had cut him off from help. They had anticipated his need for reinforcements and blocked it before he even tried. "How could they know?" he asked. His tactical officer had no answer. Aboard Admiral Morgan's flagship, Jake Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. "The jamming is working, Admiral. The Krellians cannot call for backup." "Good," Lisa said. "Now let us finish this. All ships concentrate fire on their flagship. Target their engines and weapon systems. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed." "Admiral, why not destroy it?" Jake asked. "It would end the battle faster." Lisa shook her head. "Because we are not trying to massacre them. We are trying to teach them a lesson. We want prisoners who can go home and tell their people what happened here. We want the galaxy to know that humanity is not weak prey." The human fleet converged on the Krellian flagship like wolves on a wounded bear. They hit it from every angle. Precise strikes that took out specific systems. Engines went dark. Weapons fell silent. Life support stayed online, but the ship was helpless. "They are signaling surrender," Jake reported. "Accept it," Lisa ordered. "Ceasefire. All ships on ceasefire." The battle stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the silence that followed, Lisa looked at her young crew. They were tired, some of them were scared, but they had won. Earth's first real battle against a galactic power, and humanity had emerged victorious. "Good work, everyone," Lisa said. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy thinks we are children playing at war. We need to show them the truth. We need to show them that humans are survivors, fighters, and we have been preparing for this our entire history." On New Horizon Colony, Maria Garcia gathered her squad in the ruins of what had been a school. The Krellian troops had retreated to their landing zones, and human reinforcements were landing all across the colony. "We held them," Private Kevin Chen said, his voice filled with amazement. 12 of us held off 50 of them." "We did more than hold them," Maria replied. "We made them afraid. That is the real victory." The alarm sirens screamed through the corridors of Sentinel-7, and Captain Daniel Brooks ran toward the command center. He was 32 years old and had commanded the Earth Defense Station for 8 months. It was supposed to be an easy assignment, a quiet post while humanity joined the Galactic Council. Nothing ever happened out here in the empty space between Earth and the nearest alien worlds. Today, everything was happening at once. Daniel burst through the command center doors and saw his crew already at their stations. Lieutenant Amy Peterson sat at the communications console, her fingers flying across the controls. She was 24 years old and had joined his crew fresh from the academy. Right now her face was pale but focused. "Report," Daniel ordered, sliding into his captain's chair. Multiple contacts dropping out of faster-than-light travel, Amy said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. 30 ships, Captain. They're not broadcasting friendly signals. They're Krellian warships. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The Krellians were one of the older species in the Galactic Council, warriors who had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had not been happy when Earth applied for membership. They thought humans were too young, too aggressive, too dangerous. Shields up. All weapons online, Daniel commanded. Send a distress signal to Earth Command. Tell them we're under attack. The station shook as the first weapons blast hit their shields. On the view screen, Daniel could see the Krellian ships moving into attack formation. They were massive vessels, each one 3 times the size of Sentinel-7. Their hulls were dark metal covered in weapon systems. They're not even trying to talk to us, said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the weapons station. He was only 22 years old, the youngest officer on the bridge. His hands were already locked on the firing controls. They just started shooting. Return fire, Daniel said. Aim for their weapon systems. Try not to destroy them if we can help it. Ben's fingers danced across his console. The station's defensive lasers fired, bright blue beams that crossed the darkness and slammed into the nearest Krellian ship. The enemy vessel's shields flared but held. It kept coming. More alarms blared. Amy looked up from her station, her eyes wide. Captain, I'm getting reports from the colonies. They're attacking everywhere. Mars Station, Luna Base, New Shanghai Colony. It's a full invasion. Daniel's mind raced. This was not a small raid or a border dispute. The Krellians were trying to wipe out humanity before Earth could become a real member of the Council. They were hitting every human settlement at once. How long until Earth can send reinforcements? Daniel asked. Amy checked her displays. 6 hours minimum. We're on our own until then. The station rocked again, harder this time. Lights flickered and went out, then came back on at half strength. Daniel gripped his chair and thought fast. 6 hours was a long time. Sentinel-7 had not been built to fight off a fleet. It was a listening post, a diplomatic station, not a fortress. But it was all they had. All personnel to battle stations, Daniel announced over the station-wide intercom. This is not a drill. We are under attack by Krellian forces. Earth Command has been notified. Our job is to hold this position until help arrives. I know we're outnumbered. I know this is scary. But we are Earth's first line of defense and we will not back down. He looked around the bridge at his young crew. Amy was 24. Ben was 22. His chief engineer, Karen Mills, was 26. His medical officer, Greg Patterson, was 25. By Krellian standards, these were children. Babies, really. The Krellians did not even begin military training until age 40. But they were not Krellians. They were humans, and humans grew up fast. Ben, I want you to target their command ship, Daniel said. Hit them with everything we've got. Make them think twice about taking us lightly. Yes, sir, Ben said, a fierce grin spreading across his face. The station's main weapon, a massive plasma cannon, swiveled and locked onto the largest Krellian vessel. For 3 seconds it charged, drawing power from every system on the station. Then it fired. The blast was beautiful and terrible. It crossed the space between the station and the Krellian ship in less than a heartbeat. The enemy's shields held for a moment, flickering with rainbow colors as they tried to absorb the energy. Then they failed. The plasma blast punched through the Krellian ship's hull and exploded inside. The entire vessel shuddered, pieces of metal spinning away into space. It was not destroyed, but it was badly hurt. The ship limped backward, trailing atmosphere and debris. For a moment, the other Krellian ships seemed to hesitate. They did not expect that, Amy said quietly. Good, Daniel replied. Let's give them more surprises. Down in the fighter bay, Ensign Kyle Martinez was climbing into his cockpit. He was 19 years old, barely old enough to vote, but he had been flying since he was 16. His hands moved through the pre-flight checklist without thinking, muscle memory taking over. All fighters prepare for launch, came the order from the flight deck commander. The captain needs us to slow down those ships. Hit-and-run tactics. Do not engage in extended combat. Stay alive. Kyle sealed his helmet and felt his fighter's engines come online. The familiar vibration ran through the small craft and he felt his fear disappear. In the cockpit, everything made sense. Up was up, down was down, enemy was enemy. Fighter squadron launch, the commander ordered. Kyle's fighter shot out of the bay along with 11 others. Space opened up around him, vast and cold and full of enemy ships. He picked his target, a Krellian cruiser that was moving to flank the station and pushed his throttle forward. His fighter screamed across the battle zone. Laser fire from the enemy ships lit up the space around him, but Kyle twisted and turned, never staying in one place long enough to hit. He learned to fly like this in simulators. Thousands of hours of practice missions. Now it was real, and somehow that made it easier. He lined up his shot and fired. His missiles streaked toward the Krellian cruiser and slammed into its engine section. Explosions rippled along the ship's stern, and it began to list to one side. "Good hit, Martinez," came the voice of his squadron leader. "Form up and let's hit the next one." Kyle pulled his fighter around and fell in with the others. Together, they dove back into the battle. On the bridge, Daniel watched his fighters dance through the enemy fleet. They were so young, these pilots. Kids, really, but they flew like veterans, like warriors who had been fighting for years. Maybe that was the problem, Daniel thought. Maybe that was why the Krellians had attacked. They looked at humans and saw children. Young faces, short lifespans, barely a century from leaving their home world. They assumed Earth would be easy prey. They had no idea what humans were capable of. "Captain, more ships dropping in," Amy called out. "These ones are broadcasting Earth codes." "It's our fleet. They're early." Daniel felt hope surge in his chest. On the view screen, he saw human warships appearing one after another, their weapons already hot and ready. At their head was a massive battleship, its hull painted with the Earth flag. "This is Admiral Lisa Morgan of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a voice over the communication system. "Sentinel-7, we've got your back. All ships engage the enemy. Show them what happens when you attack humanity." The human fleet opened fire, and the battle truly began.